Adrian, do you feel like this one deserved the remake before the 2 remake?
Um, I don't know that I honestly have an opinion on that. First of all, does anything deserve quote unquote a remake? I think it could be a full discussion in itself. Um, Mostly the thing that I feel is that I just wish that there were legal ways to make these games completely accessible to people, whether there's a paywall or not. That's my number one thing. I don't know. I feel like this game requires so much of its context. I feel like it requires the context of the PlayStation 1. I feel like it requires the context of the fact that literally the entire thing was built around someone figuring out how to do a point light on the original PlayStation.
And that's fair.
Like, I don't know. I feel like the remake discussion could be its own podcast. And I'm not someone who is generally against remakes. Ultimately, I feel that remakes are singular works that it is almost impossible to judge a remake in a vacuum, but they are a singular work in and of themselves. They are singular and they are different from the original, and as long as the original exists, they should be considered separate things. Obviously, you have to like look at a remake in the context of what it is remaking. But I don't think that remakes take anything away from the original. I just don't like when remakes replace the original, and I do think
Oh,
that
yeah.
there's a little bit of that happening with the Silent Hill 2 remake, and that is disappointing. But that's a discussion for the Silent Hill 2 podcast.
That's fair. Like, kind of for me, kind of answering my own question, Silent Hill 2 holds a special place in my heart. I played 1 when it came out and I enjoyed it, but 2 made me a fan. That said, I almost wish that they gave 1 that remake treatment before 2. Kind of in the research, the things that they did cut out of the game to make it a little more I guess I get it makes it a little more action, but being able to climb walls and those little things, I wish that they had the chance to fully commit to the
I
vision.
like that you mentioned the thing that I hate about the remake the most as something you want in the
The
potential sequel.
climbing walls
Yeah, I
thing?
hate it. I I hate that in every fucking video game. Sorry, that might not get into the podcast. I like every fucking video game now is like move this to this, climb on it.
But I think it's interesting that that was a part of the original, like, idea, the original vision.
Oh, was that okay? Well, I guess that's different because all I can see is the ladders from The Last of Us.
Oh, yeah, yeah, no. Because, like, in the that was part of the original vision, like, and plan, like, there were things that they wanted to do that, like, they were limited on between time and technology, and we've hit this point where, like, that's no longer a factor. Like, if they were doing this remake, they have the time and technology to fully realize the vision, and I would love to see that. I would love to see, like,
Hmm.
the fully realized vision of what Silent Hill was to that team.
So you're touching on things that I was gonna wait until whenever we got to do a Silent Hill 2 remake podcast, but like my response to that is they can't. They literally can't because it's 20 years later and they have a bunch of hindsight and they've made a whole bunch of video games between now and then.
And that's a very good
You
point.
can't. You just can't make like the original vision and like I don't know. I think that, like again, I'm not against remakes, but I do think of them as like singular works that are like separate from the original games. I've seen stuff like where the Toyama has said, or not Toyama, whoever the director for Silent Hill 2 was saying that it was like, oh yeah, we would have done all of these things had we had modern technology. Like we wouldn't have had fixed camera angles. And it's like something that they said in developer interviews years ago with Silent Hill 2 is that Mary's dead body is in the back of James's car. Was always there.
Oh,
Was always there. And now in the remake, you can see it. You can go and look and use the third person camera, and you can see it, right? You can see it wrapped up in there if you happen to take a look. First of all, I don't actually know that makes the game better because we have
Yeah, I don't know either.
because we have the tech, but again, maybe they would have done that had they had the tech back then. I don't know. But again, like maybe it's good that they had those limitations to like limit those kinds of excesses that kind of like takes away from the intrigue. On kind of an opposite note, in the prison that's underneath the historical society, in the original game, there is a cell that when you go near it, the radio starts to go off. And if you go to the cell and you take like a weapon or something and you start hitting, you actually start hitting something that you can't see to the point where
Oh,
you can kill it, where the radio will eventually like dissipate. You'll hear a noise like you killed a monster and the radio dissipate and you never see what it was. Third person camera, you can't do that. You just can't do that. So, like the prison segment, which is very different in the remake. You haven't gotten there yet. But I can tell you, like I was like, are they gonna like recreate that moment? How could they recreate that moment? They don't. It's just not there.
oh wow.
And it's like, but there was no good way. They couldn't do it. Because that's the thing that's like unique, specific to how the game was made back then.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so like my feeling ultimately comes down to with any remake ultimately is that it's best to just think of them as just, I think they can exist, and I think it's also interesting to see what they change versus what they don't and how different teams approach different things, especially when like remakes are radically different. Reimaginings. We'll talk about Shattered Memories someday, more relevant to this podcast.
Oh
Um
god, yeah, I'd love to I can't wait to talk
I
about that.
cannot wait, because oh man, I can't wait to piss off the internet when I say it's my second favorite Silent Hill.
I can't I don't know where I rank it, but I absolutely love
I
it.
love that game so much. Well, like and that's I love when we take reimagined approaches to those things, right? But I also like things like the Silent Hill 2 remake that try to be in the spirit, but with something new. But I also like keep in mind that like it can't replace the original. The original came out in a place and time and context and is worthy of its own, and you can like it and dislike it for completely different reasons. And I think that like anybody who is into this hobby more than just like a cursory casual thing that they do to spend their time, should take the time to check out older works. I'm not interested in creating a canon. I don't think that we have to say you must play this thing and you must play that thing. But I think it is worth examining and looking at something and being able to access to be able to like, form your opinions or just create a critical consensus of your own perspective. It's important to have these things be accessible and not be replaced, which, I that's the ugly shadow of the Silent Hill 2 remake, is that it just kind of feels like it's a replacement.
And that is disappointing because I feel like, it definitely should not be a replacement.
Yeah. Well, again, there's a really good fan HD remaster of the original Silent Hill 2 that I
Oh,
highly
yes.
recommend people go find and check out. Anyway, I don't know. That might be some Patreon material we just recorded right there.
I think you might be right.
For sure. All right, Lamont, shall we